presentation of the conclusions of the feasibility study and the community outreach. So they're going to have a brief recap of that and also kind of talking about what the next steps are in this process. And if time allows, because we are going to be talking about some opportunities for public-private partnerships, if you're interested, I have some information on opportunity zones and how that might dovetail into something like this. So with that, I would like to introduce Rohan Kurupu, who's the RTA Director of Planning, to make the presentation. And also with us this evening is Larry Rubio, who is the Executive Officer with RTA, and Kristen Warnzinski, who's their grants administrator.
Yeah. Thank you, Diana. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the Council. My name is Rohan Kurupu, the Director of Planning, and it's again a pleasure to present this presentation to you. If you recall, probably about a little over a year ago, we presented the same information to you, but this is a sort of an abbreviated version because a lot has happened in the past year. One is we've increased the amount of funding that RTA can bring to the table through other grant sources. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then also we prepared 2 grant applications to bring additional funding towards this project. So by way of background, this is the area highlighted in green is the area that we evaluated. We analyzed so many different options, presented it to the community, had multiple workshops, and based on the input, we identified this area that's highlighted in yellow as the most preferred and the optimum location for a mobility hub. So this is a picture of the site from Devonshire, looking north. So last time we had this presentation was in, actually we started the study in July 2017. We held over 20 community meetings and 2 community workshops and received over 300 strains of input from the community, and we summarized them into some major themes for this project. And on September 26th, we presented the plan in concept to the City Council, and we approved it in concept and provided some direction for city staff and us to move forward. And today I'm going to present some of the results and the next steps to really bringing this project to fruition. So as we talk to the residents, these are some of the common themes or requests that we heard from the community as well as you and some of the key stakeholders. They clearly wanted some more green space, park areas, and areas to walk their dogs and kind of hang out with their pets. So that was a very, very prevalent theme as we talked to the community. They wanted to see more mom and pop stores and businesses, very similar to what's already there in the downtown area. So kind of extend that theme into this new area. So we listened very carefully and we incorporated those elements into the proposal. Also, a vibrant, sustainable, active downtown. We kept hearing this over and over again. People really wanted to come and come to downtown, have a place where they can actually spend time. And safety was another underlying theme throughout this study process. Quality of life, safe places for people to come and spend time. Also preserve the heritage of Hemet. There's a long history here, a lot of agriculture, horses, so all those kind of historic themes, the community wanted us to preserve those. And then, of course, increase the property value. When we started this study, property values are still low. I believe it's gradually increasing, but clearly we heard loud and clear, if you're building something, make sure it acts as a catalyst for increasing property values in the surrounding area as well as city. Make sure what we build is an asset for the community and the city. So we listened, and that's exactly what we are doing here, presenting something directly in response to the request of the community, as well as some of the concerns that you brought up during the early council meeting. So the transit hub is going to be a small portion of a bigger development, and that's how we are going to be packaging this and delivering this project. So you can see some of the early visions that we created, but this is to be refined, and as we advance this project to the next phase, we will be doing far more detailed architectural and design work to reflect what the community wants. But this is kind of an artist rendering of what is possible. These are some more renderings. This is from the railroad crossing in Devonshire, looking sort of northeast. Some potential designs. And then this is on Devonshire, completely converting that street into a very pedestrian-friendly downtown look and feel type of environment. And the transit center itself, the mobility hub, this too is to be refined as we get further into the design process, especially if we are delivering this as a public-private partnership. Then whatever the dominant theme that the developer will come up with will be reflected in the mobility hub as well. This is a bird's eye view of the mobility hub area, clearly reflecting some of the specific plan for this area and more zeroing in on the transit-oriented development for this whole block. There are very detailed maps and renderings in your report that you can look at some of the possibilities for this whole area. And then there are additional parcels that can be packaged as this public-private partnership. Deanna may talk a little bit more about some of those possibilities now that we have additional funding that we are bringing to the table to act as catalyst. So when we presented this to you about a year ago, we had about $5.3 million. In the meantime, we applied for additional funding. We were able to secure $1.6 million. So today we have $6.9 million toward this project. That's RTA's commitment today. We will continue to apply for additional funding. There are a lot of opportunities that come about from the Federal Transit Administration and Caltrans, where RTA can act as the lead agency. And then we worked with the city during the course of the year. We prepared 2 grant applications. The first one was for urban greening. We were not successful in getting those funding, but it ranked very, very high within Riverside County. So we are going to continue to polish that grant application and fine-tune it and reapply, because most of the evaluation is done based on the project readiness. So as we move forward, get this project further ready, that grant application will continue to score higher and higher. So if a project has completed its initial architectural and engineering work and has completed environmental clearance, then it's classified as a shovel-ready project. That's the point that these grant applications will clearly score high and have a very high chance of getting, because most of these funding agencies don't want to see funding sitting around. When they fund a project, they want it delivered. So they want to see these projects advance to that shovel-ready status. And also the active transportation plan, the city applied for $6.9 million. We haven't heard the results yet. We hope that we'll be successful in getting that or part of that monies. And then, of course, we will continue to apply for additional funding. And then, of course, the value of the land. So all of these things combined, if we can pile up or stockpile about $10 to $15 million in public investment, then you can attract a very, very high quality private developer or private investment to develop this parcel. And that's really the direction that we want to go, because developing projects through private-public partnerships can result in a very high quality economic catalyst for the city. And then, of course, the private investment that we can bring. And I want go through one more slide and then pass it on to Deanna to talk about the potential private investment. So today we are representing the conceptual plan to the City Council, and if it is approved, we will take it to our RTS Board of Directors with the direction that the City Council provides. And if everything goes well, we will develop a RFP for a comprehensive plan for this area, including that private-public partnership and a funding strategy that includes our strategy to increase the public investment. Clearly taking this project toward environmental clearance and entitlements, and then public-private partnership where the city will be the lead agency and control the this development. And then develop a project delivery plan with RTA because there's some federal funds involved, so we will need to comply with some of the federal procurement and design and federal interest in this project. And then, of course, getting into architectural engineering of the mobility hub as well as the private development, and then having really formulating the public-private partnership, the development agreements, and what the private investor or the developer will be responsible for delivering. So with that, I'm going to pause for a moment and pass it on to Deanna.
So tonight at the work study, there's two items of direction that RTA and the staff is looking for. The first is to authorize staff time to continue to work with RTA in developing the RFP to move to the next step of a comprehensive plan that would include the city's property where the mobility hub is being proposed, as well as the opportunity for the future Metrolink platforms in that area and the private investment surrounding it. At the last work study, the comments that we had from the mayor and council at that time was that you were most interested in having the mobility hub paired with other development opportunities and looked at in a comprehensive fashion, not just by itself. And that's what we're proposing to do in this next process. Once that RFP has been established, or if we're getting that direction, then continue to authorize staff, city manager, city attorney to work towards what does that actually look like in terms of delivery. What is it a memorandum of understanding in terms of the leasing of the property to RTA and all the details about the specific project. But first of all, I believe that the next step is more of a comprehensive design and look and just see what the developer interest is. So if you have any questions on that piece, if not, I'll kind of segue into giving you some information on the opportunity zones, and then we can ask some questions of RTA, or if you'd rather ask questions of Rohan right now, and then we can move into other areas.
Is there any council that would like to ask some questions now, or wait till the next presentation? Looks like everybody wants to wait till the...
I actually have more handouts, so let me bring those over here. It didn't really work in terms of that. I can't even blame it on the lateness of the hour. Okay. So first of all, opportunity zones are really a new concept. It was just authorized by the federal government in 2017 as part of the federal tax package. And essentially what it is, it's not really a funding mechanism for cities, is a little more indirect benefit for us, because what it actually is an investment benefit. So it's being able to utilize tax write-offs for investments in certain areas that are designated as opportunity zones. There were only, the governor determined 879 census tracts that either have poverty rates or at least 20% of the median income of no more than 80% of the statewide. So given that information, they looked statewide and determined what these opportunity zones are. These boundaries, they may be a little odd or irregular. It's because they're based on census tract boundaries. So Hemet is fortunate, I guess, enough to have 3 of these zones within the city of Hemet, as shown on the map that I sent out for you. I couldn't get it into a slide. So all of this downtown Hemet, in our downtown Hemet specific plan, is within an opportunity zone. And then the west end, there's a number of potential development out there, as well as the city's 18-acre site that's off of, Warren and Dominigoni. That's also within an opportunity zone, and some new development potential to the west. The benefit to cities for something like this, or kind of the role with cities. So what I've handed out to you is, one, just some information from the IRS regarding opportunity zones, and if there's developers that you're or anyone is interested in or talking to as an investment mechanism and how that works. The longer that the investment is in the property, the greater the tax benefit that can be achieved. The other handout I gave you is kind of from a city or local government perspective of an opportunity zone investment checklist. So this is really more in terms of the city's role is more in letting the public and the community, or the developer or the investment community, know that we have opportunity zones. So we do want to be able to post this map on the city's website. And what they recommended, this checklist, I won't go through it all, is the 2 major components is to start to kind of build a team of people internally and externally, and that would help to deliver this kind of a thing. We think a good fit, and why I'm segueing into this presentation tonight, is that we're talking about public-private partnerships. So getting the word out as part of that RFP process to potential developers or investors that this is a mechanism that is available at this property may increase the desirability of the investment in the downtown area. So that's what we're interested in. The second point is to build your project list. So this is somewhat similar to what Rohan was mentioning as far as for the grants. And the further along we are in knowing what we want to do, and the more specific we can be in terms of what some of those investment opportunities or those projects are, the more attractive it might be for the investment community. I don't know a lot of detail about the legislation, but it does seem to be fairly broad. It can be utilized for infrastructure. It can be utilized for a number of facilities. It can be business investment. So they intentionally made it fairly flexible, it sounds like, but the limitations are it must be within the opportunity zone. It has to be for a certain investment for a certain time period, and reinvested back into that area. So other than, if you're going to ask me a lot of investment questions, I'm not going to be able to answer those. But from a land use perspective, it's another opportunity for people to come in and invest in the city of Hemet.
Deanna, when we're looking at possible economic development options within the mixed use part of the project around the mobility hub, is it possible to, or is it reasonable to try and get pop-up retail and restaurants as a component?
Sure.
Well, I ask that because if the entity, the longevity of the entity is important. I think that, the pop-up retails and restaurants are such a big thing right now, and bringing P3s in at this point, or bringing the P3s in with that option, where there isn't as much risk, it is, is probably quite attractive to them, I would think, because you want to see how the area is going to do. And in the meantime, I think it lends itself to constant engagement with the community, or that, people being inquisitive about, okay, what's the next one? And just the constant movement of those types of retail and restaurants.
And with the idea being it's a smaller space, so they're not having to commit to such long-term leases or so much square footage. And part of what we've seen in a couple of cities, like Riverside's Food Lab, I haven't been there yet, I've just been hearing about it, but it's where they converted a building, or you could have a build-a-suit such as this, to where you're designing it to be able to have a central interior space with exterior eating areas as well, but they would have those. It's kind of like an indoor food court almost, but with, instead of kind of fast food orientation, it's more, it could be microbreweries, it could be, other, bistro type food.
And I think I saw, if I remember correctly, they got $3 million, City of Riverside got $3 million through the urban greening grant last year, this last round. And when I read what they proposed, it read like this could happen. There were so many things to it that,
and I think what the opportunity is here that RTA is presenting, with the funding that they've already have, and working cooperatively on a RFP or a comprehensive plan, is that you're designing that framework to allow that private investment to happen. Because it's really hard to do it on its own. But if the city and RTA are partnering in terms of infrastructure grants, and we're able to set that stage, we can create these buildable pads, then I think you've created a destination, or you create a sense of place that the property doesn't have right now, as you saw in the earlier slides. So it's how do we encourage that investment as a benefit that not only serving the public with the mobility hub, but integrates that investment in the city. And part of that too is it's city-owned land right now, which is tax exempt, property tax exempt. So there's lots of opportunities and decisions at some point, but if it does transfer as an incentive to a private enterprise, then it becomes taxable. And so now at least you have some tax advantage, as opposed to being vacant, city-owned land.
At what point do you bring the P3 interest in?
I think that's what we were talking about with the RFP, for kind of within this next. And Rohan, you may want to come up and talk some more, but I think we're talking about going a little deeper into the planning and design component, and then also trying to attract what are some interested in investments and developers.
So with the RTA's financial commitment that is already in place, combined with the value of the property and the pending grants, I think we can go out there and probe what's available in the market. I think that's the purpose of that RFP, to see how the market is going to react, how the developers are going to react to this initial interest in creating this public-private partnership. The good thing is we don't need to jump in there immediately. We can explore and see what's beneficial to the city, and then take a step forward,
Thanks. One of the things that I was thinking about is one of the things about development is time is money for developers, and I think that something that might be good is that if the city or RTA has a set of plans ready to go, so that there's we can bypass all the time-consuming red tape and say, hey, if you like this, then you can break ground tomorrow. Or if you like this, you can break ground in 4 months. If you want to do your own, it's going to take, you got to go through the whole process. I think that would be something that would be.
I think that that's the idea, and we're building on the foundation that we started with a specific plan, and we did the environmental clearance at that level. We'll do additional environmental, at this level, and also establishing, just as Council Member mentioned a moment ago, these buildable pads, because part of it is, I think a lot of what is difficult for developers of a ground up is the infrastructure that's required. And there is infrastructure. Devonshire needs to be widened. There's a signal that needs to go in and some of these other things, which is why both the city and RTA are looking at applying for infrastructure grants that could set some of that framework. So as you mentioned, you could just be interested in a pad, and here's the types of uses that we're already looking at for that location. There's also, we're focused more on the site next to the mobility hub, but as you saw in that one graphic of the city-owned land and what was studied in the market analysis, there's other available property off of Buena Vista and up towards Oakland, and one of those pieces might be a housing component. And there's a lot of housing money out there, or being able to put that together where the city would still be in control of the quality of the type of housing that could be built. So I think that's part of what we're looking at, is exploring those opportunities. The other thing, if you had it in the concept plan, the final plan that we provided to you, there is a market analysis. RTA in that first phase did do a pretty extensive market analysis in terms of the types of uses, and I think it's high, medium, low opportunity given our current market. And so, let's see, retail had, and some office uses and housing scored well. So I know you'll want to get into that in more detail, but I think there's been quite a bit of work already done in that first phase to indicate what's going to be the most marketable on that property.
Anyone else have any questions? Comments? Comments are good too.
I'm just very happy that the project has gotten to this point, and I definitely like what I see, and I think the whole concept of the project as a whole in that area, to look at the complete project instead of just looking at it piece by piece, is going to be a definite asset and a very positive function of gaining more interest from private developers and getting things done. So you guys have just done a great job. Really appreciate the public input and the time and energy you've taken to make sure that the public has been engaged in it and taken their questions and concerns into consideration. So it looks good so far. Thank you.
Soon enough. Carla, do you have anything to add? For me, it's been a year, right? Just about a year since we went through this weekend before. And I think it would be helpful if we just got an update even 6 months, quarter would be great. Even if it's a couple sentences. Here we are today. This is how far we've come, and rather than wait the time frame that we did this time, I think it does a couple things. Keeps you engaged in the prospect of this actually coming to fruition, which is great. And as we think, as us as council members, as we are out in the public and talking to people, and we come across people at conferences all the time where it might be a benefit to know exactly where we are from time to time, so that we can continue to draw interest from possibly P3 or private entities. And so if we could get updates, just not necessarily a whole work study or anything, but just updates as we go along to see where we are and keep the interest going, and certainly inform the public as well.
I think one of the other things, objectives we'd like to do this time, now that we're at this point in the process too, as we move forward into phase 2, is to engage other public partners as well, like the hospital and the school district, who are both represented within that area. And I think having we've always had their support in the other grants, but I think kind of starting from that perspective at the beginning and trying to strengthen our grant applications, so that we can really be a benefit to those entities as well.
Yeah, great. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Now my question comes up. It's on the opportunity zone. If you look at any of them, does that mean that any property within that green area would qualify as an opportunity zone for private individuals to make an investment?
So again, I'm not an expert on this, but you might want to have a work study or learn more about it. But so the opportunity zone is established in what you see in the map. So those are the areas where the investment opportunity is possible. But what needs to be established is an investment fund, and I forget, it's in the materials, but it's called something. So that can be a single investor, that could be multiple investors, and that's where some of the financial component comes into it, that is really not so much the city as financial advisors or people that would package those kinds of funds together that you might be able to invest in. But it could also be a single developer or a partnership that could achieve that on a various property. So that's, I think, why what I've read so far on the state's website and on the federal website in terms of the opportunity zones is it's really kind of combining this team or resources that are going to be experienced or know about this, that could put the word out there. Oh, Hemet has some, and here's some opportunities you might be interested in. Here's some projects that might be a way that you would want to join that fund.
Yeah, and I do have a question. As you go forward with this project and looking at potential types of business, are we going to be steering or providing preferences for what types of businesses, or are we just completely saying this is the footprint, this is what we're looking at, but beyond that, we're completely open to the type of businesses that we want to attract there?
Well, you have...
Or we having maybe some preferences that we would like to see.
So that's the benefit of owning the property and being the city, is that you have land use control, both from property ownership and from the governing agency. So the specific plan established it already as a transit-oriented district, which had certain uses, which is a very broad mix. So it's the mobility hub, it's office, it's retail, it's housing. But where it goes, in that area, this is this next process, and the city would still have complete land use control as being able to, where do you want to drill it down to? Or do you open it to the marketplace and say, here's available sites and here's the acreages, and, what's your proposal for different development opportunities? So I think the city, the council, the commission can have as much input into that process as you desire.
And that's right in line with what Michael was advocating, is if there's as much preparation, that may not be the right word, but infrastructure-wise or those kinds of things, to provide that additional incentive, it just gives them a head start on getting their business up and running.
For example, one of those implementation pieces the city might want to look at in the future or set aside some funding for would be eventually doing a parcel map. Because if we already have it subdivided and you have developable components and where the roadway connections are going to be and the right-of-way connections to serve that area, then there's more certainty for the developers, and then they know what they're buying, and they're not having to go through a mapping process themselves. So there's a lot of those kinds of implementation pieces that we can be looking at.
Ellen, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think it's a good step, first step in working with another agency that has access to grants and things. And it's going to be tailored to us. I would imagine that there will be a market study sooner or later when you start getting into the retail and commercial components, which the council will then have an opportunity to participate in this evaluation and make some determination. The mayor mentioned pop-ups. I had the opportunity to meet with the people who did the original pop-ups in London, and then they did it in San Francisco. And so, believe it or not, the existing downtown kind of lends itself to that because they go into vacant stores, they do entertainment outside, etc. Almost got them on as a consultant, but didn't. One of the things that's transpiring in the retail business, and Mike would probably know more than I, you don't do long leases. You try to avoid the long leases because the economy changes so quickly. And so smaller spaces, pop-ups, there's a lot of, like Verizon or some of the online businesses and such will use it to test out new products, and it becomes fun. It's a fun kind of event for the community. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity, good leadership, somebody to do the drawings. That's good. So it's something to look forward to, and it's probably 3 to 5 years to get this thing going.
Thanks.
I think, Mayor, if I may, for the benefit of RTA, because they are making a substantial investment in this next step and funding the majority of that, at our last work study a year ago when we did this, we did have a motion and a vote on it so that we just have something official in the record authorizing us to continue to work
Happy to ask for
forward.
that motion.
Put the lights.
I would move that we authorize the 2 bullet points up there. That's my motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Let's vote. I have a first and a second. And that passes 5-0. Thank you so much. And for Larry Rubio and his team, I can't even express how grateful we are that you're working with us on this project. And I, for one, am so excited about the prospects of what it can do for the community. So thank you very, very much for your involvement and your help along the way.
Thanks, Deanna. Thank you.
And with that, we'll recess for until regular session, and we'll see you back at 7.